Welcome to my channel. This is the house that ate my parents. It all started when my family and I moved into our new house in the countryside. We'd lived in Tokyo for as long as I could remember, and I couldn't wait to get out of the city. Our new house was cheap because it was old, but it was big, nearly 100 years old. It needed a lot of work and repairs, but we didn't mind. We got most of the rooms for free, which was great since I was going through puberty and needed my own space. The real selling point of the house was its location. It was surrounded by tall trees and sat on the edge of a dried-up riverbed. Even the closest neighbor was over a kilometer away. For those who have never experienced living in a Japanese city, especially Tokyo, this meant ultimate peace and quiet. I couldn't wait to move in. The only strange request the real estate agent had was for us to leave all the windows in the house open at all times. The agent seemed really nervous about something, but he wouldn't tell us what. He kept saying something about making sure the house was well ventilated, but I could tell he was hiding something. Nevertheless, we went ahead with the purchase, and a week later, we moved in. Our first night in the new house was uneventful. The next morning, however, was when things started to get weird. I woke up in the middle of the night to what sounded like a loud sigh. I couldn't quite place it, so I chalked it up to some nocturnal animal and went back to sleep. But in the morning I noticed that the floorboards in my room had creaked pretty loudly, even though I hadn't made a sound. My mom and dad said they'd heard nothing and probably I'd just been dreaming. Then one night a few weeks later, I heard it again, a deep, low rumble like someone inhaling very slowly. I could feel the air around me subtly shifting, like the walls of the house were exhaling. When I got out of bed to investigate, the floor seemed to rise slightly where I was standing, then slowly sank back down again. That's when I realized that the whole house had exhaled, and I knew without a doubt that whatever it was still alive. I told my parents about it, but they didn't believe me. They said there was no way a building could breathe. I stayed awake for the rest of the night, but nothing else happened. In the following weeks, the sighing continued on and off, always in the middle of the night. Sometimes it was a soft whisper, sometimes a loud roar. Sometimes it felt like the house was inhaling, sometimes it felt like it was exhaling, but never did I hear anything other than the sigh itself. No groans, no moans, no screams, just sighs. One time I managed to get out of bed before the sigh hit, and I put my ear to the floorboard. That's when I heard it, a steady, slow heartbeat. I don't know how to describe the feeling, but it was like the house was alive, like its wooden bones were holding some ancient, unfathomable creature. It wasn't scary so much as it was eerie and sad, like the house itself was crying. Then one day while I was hanging out in my room, I heard my mom scream. I ran out of my room and into the hallway just in time to see her bedroom walls bulge inward. Then they snapped back into place. She stood in the doorway, shaken but otherwise unharmed. I asked her what happened, but she seemed confused. She said she must have misjudged a step and leaned too hard on the wall. I could tell she was hiding something. I could see it in her eyes. But when I tried to ask her more questions, she just told me to go back to my room and shut up. So I did. That night, I stayed awake again. Around midnight, I heard the familiar sound of the floorboards heaving upwards. From between the cracks, I saw two eyes staring back at me. They were dull, soulless, empty. There was something behind the walls, something that had been watching me the entire time. But it wasn't until later that night when I heard another sound, a wet, gurgling inhale. The sound of my mother being pulled through the walls. In the morning after, of course, not sleeping at all, I went downstairs for breakfast. Dad was silent. Mom was distant. They barely acknowledged my existence. Maybe they had finally figured out that something was wrong with the house. Maybe they were scared too, or maybe they just didn't care. I couldn't tell. Then I heard the stairs creak. I turned around just in time to see my dad get sucked right through the steps. I screamed for my mom, but she just stared at the stairs as if they weren't there. I tried to help, but it was no use. The stairs were stuck. I couldn't pull him back out. Finally, the stairs snapped shut, and I was left alone with my mom in silence. She was crying now, begging me to run away, to call the police. But I knew they wouldn't believe us. I've heard stories of Japanese houses swallowing people whole. It happens more often than you think. and the authorities always just write it off as some freak accident. They never look into it. And so we waited in silence, listening to the steady heartbeat of the house. Sometime during that night, I heard my mother scream as she was pulled through the walls of our bedroom. When morning came, my dad was gone and my mom was gone. All that remained of them were their clothes and shoes, which were lying on the floor, pressed flat as if something had sucked the air out of them. When the police arrived, they found nothing. The house looked normal, empty, quiet. But the neighbors swore they heard muffled screams coming from the walls late that night, followed by a long, shuddering breath. To this day, nobody knows what happened to my parents or what's inside that house. The police never even showed up to investigate. As far as the world is concerned, my parents simply vanished. I hope wherever they are, they're free from the house and whatever was inside it. But every time I close my eyes, I see those soulless eyes staring back at me from between the floorboards, and I hear the slow, steady heartbeat of the house that ate my parents. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share your scary story with us in the comments below.